think it's like, this isn't real. It's like we are in a simulation. This is just a game. It's a simulation. And the person that is here, Carol and Monica, are just avatars. This is not the real one. The real one is the consciousness or the soul that is on the other side. And we just choose to be in this game, play the game as if it were real. But of course, it is not. It looks real. It tastes real. It tastes real, but it's not. It's just a game, a very well designed game. And what we have to remember is it's like, okay, don't be lured by it, don't be seduced by it. Just know that this is a game and you can still play the game, but keeping the awareness that it's just a game. And this is real, the real concept of awakening, knowing that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spiritual Forum. I'm so glad you're here. I just want to send a shout out to all my listeners and all my subscribers, particularly my recent subscribers. I'm so grateful for you being on this path with me. And this podcast, just as a reminder, it is a podcast about hope, inspiration, and awakening. And if you're on the journey of inspiration and especially awakening, this is the podcast for you. And we handle like real life topics with real life people, listening to their stories and learning how to live the spiritual life and also move through this time of great transformation. So thank you for being on the journey and thank you for joining me today. Let me introduce my guest. I'm so excited. She comes from Spain today, and her name is Monica Esgueva. She's a renowned self-development teacher and spiritual guide, known for bridging the gap between the Eastern and Western philosophies. Now, she's got a long and extensive bio. I'll mention just a few things. She's a prolific author. She's a mindfulness teacher. She teaches workshops, and she's a TEDx speaker. She has been an executive trainer for over 2,500 executives, and she's been awarded Top Women Leaders in Spain. And there's just a whole lot more. But that will be in the bio section, and perhaps it'll come out when she tells her story. But today we're going to be focusing on the ideas that Monica has put forth in her latest book that is called The 7 Levels of Wisdom, A Path to Fulfillment. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much.
I'm so glad to have you. And I'm really looking forward to talking with you about your ideas around wisdom and around what's going on in the world today. I know we talked before I hit the record button. And as I was reading your book, I emailed you and I said, I really get what you're talking about. So I've been looking forward to having this conversation. But before we go into wisdom and some of your ideas, I'd love to hear briefly what your story is, where you've come to this place where you're combining Eastern and Western philosophies and theologies. And how did you get there? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course, I will try to be brave. It's a long story, so I try to cut it short. I could say that I was born spiritual. I was very aware of God, of the divinity. I was very close to all that since I was a very young kid. And I will ask my parents, where do we come from? What is the purpose of life? And of course, they couldn't answer. I was very aware that I was not coming from Earth. I was coming from the stars, and I will ask them, what do I come from? And then my father will just take it lightly, and he used to say, okay, we found you under the bridge, and you were living with the gypsies, and we took you home. And I was like, I burst out crying because like they didn't understand me. So I started to trying to find some answers in the Catholic Church because that was what was more available at the time. But after a while, I saw that they were not very coherent with Jesus' message. So I left that. And what I did is I was 14, 15. I started reading everything I could find of transcendence, spirituality, and the nature of the mind. trying to understand. I was on a quest to find answers. So I did that for a while, and then of course I went to university. I tried to be normal. So I went to university to get a bachelor's degree and a master's in international trade. And then I married early. I moved to London. I worked for a little while for Prada in London, and then I moved to Paris, and I worked for an international business school. And at some point, I had like what everybody is aspiring to in this world. Materially speaking, I was well off. I was living in a very good neighborhood in Paris, good social life, good holidays, good husband, good everything. But I was so unfulfilled. So at some point, I decided to go to Dharamsala, which is in India, northern India, at the feet of the Himalayas, because I wanted to do some research on Tibetans on exile. And I wanted to go there for 3 weeks, but everything went sideways, so to speak, because in the end it was really good. And I missed my flight home, so I had to stay for 3 months. And that changed my life because I what I did is I started studying with Tibetan lamas. I received teachings from the Dalai Lama, and I realized that they were speaking my language, and it was not Tibetan, of course. It was the language of my heart, of my soul. They everything they taught resonated within myself, and it was so amazing. So what I saw is they had a very good map of the mind and the heart, and they made a big effort to dissolve the ego as a way to get to enlightenment. And that was really what I was aspiring to. So I went back home after 3 months. Home was in Paris at the time. And I realized I could not go on with my former life. So within
Mhm.
6 months, I left my job. I left my husband. I left my house. I left everything I owned and my plans. And I went back home to my parents with whatever I could fit in my car. And then yes, I had to start from scratch. And it was like, I didn't even know what I could do to earn a living. I just knew that I didn't want to waste my life. And the only thing I knew at the time is like, I want to I want to contribute to a better world. I'm not doing that. And I don't know how long I will have on this planet. So I cannot delay that. And what I did is it was a very progressive path. It was not sudden at all. You know, it's like I had to get some good training, mainly in the US in NLP, neurolinguistic programming, hypnosis. I studied mindfulness in UCLA, you know, a number of things. And then I will continue going every year for 2 or 3 months to Nepal and India to continue my studies with the Tibetan lamas. And and that's how we all started and brought me here now.
That's so fascinating. A couple things. First of all, I think some of us as children come onto the planet and are asking these questions like, "What is life about?" and "Why am I here?" And you find yourself like in a completely foreign land, like nobody gets me here. But what I think is really interesting about you is you stayed with it. I remember myself having similar kinds of contemplative questions, but I feel like I got sucked into the material and I stayed there for a lot longer than you did. And I have to say, I'm just really I, I'm kind of in awe of that switch that goes off in a person and it went off on you, or I should say probably on, because so many people find themselves unfulfilled. You know, they're having material success, they have the family, the relationships, the money, the vacations, everything, and they still find themselves unfulfilled and they still keep plodding on, thinking like this is all that life is.
Yeah.
But there is something in you that said no or that said yes to something else. And to cause you to go to India that's fascinating to me. That's fascinating to me because I think that's a point that many of us get to, but we take a left instead of a right or a right instead of a left and find ourselves stuck in the world that I know you refer to as a matrix, I do as well. And and you didn't. You recognize that life is who knows how long, and you want to make a difference. And so giving up everything, I mean, it's kind of like what Jesus asked people to do, give up everything and follow me. It's frightening.
I look backwards now, I look in hindsight, and it's like, how did I do that? I don't know. I really don't know. It was a huge leap of faith. And for some people it
Yes.
takes, it's all, they have an overnight success. It was not my case. It took me 5 years until I could make a living out of it. So I was really heavily tested to make sure that I was on the right line, and I was not doing it because of other reasons, but because of service. And it was hard. I had to have a lot of perseverance and faith because it was not easy at all.
I love what you say because leaps of faith are not easy. And then once you take them, people think, okay, well, the Red Sea is going to part for me. Everything's going to be fine. And it's not. You said you were tested. And that is part of the path. It's like it's a hero's journey. The hero's journey is full of tests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's how we grow. We Of course the ego doesn't want that. We want to be comfortable and safe all the time, but it doesn't work that way for the soul. We come here for the challenges, no matter how uncomfortable they are. So if we don't assume that part of the hero's journey, we will never be the heroes of our own story. And we came for that. That's how we achieve mastery. And this is something that every single human being will have to go through at some point, whether in this life or in another life. And it takes a long time, but it doesn't mean that we don't have to go through it, all of us. It's just what we can choose is the pace, how fast you want to go or
Hmm.
how slow you want to take it. That's up to us. But at some point, we will all have to go through the same hurdles. That's the way it is.
Yeah, that's the way it is. That's the way it is, and I think it is so interesting. I think that is kind of what free will is that we have the choice in do we wanna fast track it or do you want to take our time? But ultimately, we all have to go through, I think, the same door, perhaps different paths, but the same ultimate door, and many of us are just prolonging it.
But they're like small initiations that we have to go through. And it's not like someone is testing us. It's our own soul. You know,
Mhm.
from our soul, we chose to be here. No one forced us. Of course, we don't remember because this is part of the game of being in the matrix, the veil of forgetfulness. Because this is all about exams that we're preparing for. We are studying to take those exams. So if we knew the answers, then there was the merit in it.
As you say that, I'm reminded of the recurring dream that so many people have and that I have. The recurring dream where it's like finals week or tomorrow I have huge exams and I'm not ready. And I think that is our psyche telling us,
Yes,
reminding us of the journey that we're on. Like
absolutely.
you get studying. Get ready for that test.
Because it's gonna come, sooner or later it's gonna come. So you better be prepared for it. So that's why we
Yeah.
have to take the small, the small challenges that we have in our lives, the small things that are uncomfortable and they are not as we want them to be, as just a training. Instead of wanting them to be out of our way, it's like, okay, just take it. Take it, like accept it. Because you have to train small for when big things come your way. You will be trained. You will have all the preparation that it takes to pass the exam. And of course, it's not pleasant, but it doesn't mean it's not going to be there.
Right, right. I kind of want to get into there's so many things that I could quote from your book. I'm going to start with a couple from the introduction, but I'd like to get into wisdom and why did you write a book on wisdom and why are we focusing on wisdom? I've got my own answers to that, but you're the guest. But you say that we have to choose the time of the separation of the wheat from the chaff has come. Each person must decide where he or she wants to be, living in an organic timeline with brotherhood and compassion as the norm, or being willing to be dragged into transhumanist timeline where the only freedom allowed would be scoring points in the metaverse. And as I mentioned to you, I've had other guests on who also talk about these two paths that were like two paths diverge in the wood and where we can choose which one we're taking. And that this is this kind of point that we're at in our evolution, and that it's really important to pay attention and to make choices.
No.
But also your whole book is about evolving our wisdom, going through these different levels of wisdom so that we can make the life affirming compassionate choice. So I'd love for you to talk about wisdom, what it means to you and why you're sharing wisdom about wisdom
Right.
and what there is for people in it.
Well, I think we are at the final times. It doesn't mean 1 year, but it will take years. But we are at the final times where the transformation of Earth is just happening as we speak. So pretending that it's not there is like having an elephant in the room, and then pretending that it's not there. It's there, and you may see it, you may want to ignore it, but it doesn't mean it's not there. So the change is not a change, it's a transformation. And the whole earth is increasing its vibration. So there will be a time, and in not too long, where only humans that are of that vibration could be here and can be here. So it's not about who is going to choose. No one is going to choose who is going to be here or not. It's your own vibration. And the vibration is how much you have evolved in your consciousness, in your wisdom, in your compassion, in your clarity of mind. So there are like different versions of it. There's one part where we have to grow sovereign. So we have to be able to make our own decisions about our body, our mind, our life. And no one should make those decisions for us. No expert in the world is an expert in us. We are the maximum experts on ourselves. And we have to take charge of that and responsibility. There's no more time for, okay, that expert or that authority said we have to do this. No one should do that for you. So this is the first time we have to become sovereign beings. And then the second part is you have to work on your mind and on your emotional structure. And this is really our main task in this world. It's true that because of our social model is really a fabric of, I would say, unhappiness and dissatisfaction and anxiety. And then individuals are like rats in running and running and running, but going nowhere, on the wheel. So if we take that model, we are just paid slaves. And all we look for is hedonic or hedonistic happiness, thinking that what we deserve is just a life of endless pleasure. But the problem with that is that thriving and balance is much more than that. It's not just about feeling good. Otherwise, drug users will be the happiest people in the world and clearly are not. So we are talking about something deeper that is not only that we cannot find it in our society, it's just the society will teach you and tell you and sell you a model that will go against that. So it's just a model where on a culture where we lose ourselves pursuing the wrong things. So, okay, you have to pursue success. You have to pursue followers. You have to pursue likes. You have to pursue status. You have to pursue richness, possessions, relationships, pleasure, sex, you name it. And then when you do that, you go the opposite way of finding your own essence, your own being, your own divinity within. And you're wasting your time basically running after things that have no importance whatsoever. So that's why right now it's so difficult to get out of the rut because everything goes the opposite direction. And everything that you are told from the outside will just make you forget that you have an inner voice that you have to follow. And instead of following your inner guidance, it's like, no, follow external guidances that will make you lose your mind. So it's a real big challenge that we are all facing right now here on this planet.
Yeah, that external voice is very loud. It's media, it's, for us, it's Hollywood, it's whatever authority is speaking, whatever three-letter agency
I
is telling us, or our politicians, it is interesting that it's so alluring. And I find this even with spiritual people because I don't think it's just hedonistic people, what I mean by this, people who are really immersed in the success and the rat race and all of that. There's that faction, but there are also spiritual people who are pursuing love and light, and there's something still that calls them to look to outer authority. That's not really grounded in that voice within and the divine. So I think there are two factions of people who are not seeing their sovereignty.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think it has to do, like the normies, let's call it that way. Of course, they are into the whole thing of society and they are just dragged by it. And it's very difficult that they will be able to jump into the train that goes to cooperation and light and profound meaning of life because they have chosen already. They don't want to jump into that train, and that is fine. But it's true that there are many people in the spiritual field, let's call it that way, or the spiritual area, where they don't want to see things outside, what is really happening, or many things that are happening outside in the external environment. And as you said, in politics, but not just politics, it's in three-letter agencies and Hollywood and the music world and the pharma world and the medical world and the banking system, so many things. I think it has to do with questioning the pillars of your life. And you come to a point where if you question, you will question the very base of the foundations of all your past. And it takes some courage to say, well, maybe what I have been doing all my life, or my inner beliefs regarding the world, cannot be sustained anymore. And it's like, so what now? I have nothing to sustain me. Of course, you have the spiritual thing, but it's like for many people, it's not enough. Although they don't think it's enough, clearly it's not enough. Otherwise, they will just let go of whatever you have been told. You just have to question every single thing because you question what your ego says, but you also question what other people say. So it's
Mhm.
just being able to question everything and be free to start from scratch if you have to, because otherwise you're missing a great opportunity to build something that is solid and will take you to the train that then goes to ascension, basically.
Yeah, I want to talk about ascension in a second, but I also want to talk about this awakening process because it's very, very, very unsettling. It's not an easy path. For me, I don't think I awakened to the reality of the world as early as you did, but when I did, it's like everything that I had seen before as one thing now looks different, and I can't unsee it. It the constructs that were I was holding up on my own psyche had completely dissipated, and so now there's something else that I'm seeing that's clearer and more real. For me, it was like taking the deck of cards of my life and throwing them in the air, and I was all those pieces were in the air for some amount of time, and I think that's so frightening for most people. and perhaps other people's experiences would be different than mine, but you have to just stay with the unsettling feelings and the not knowing and the relinquishing of having to defend anything that you ever defended before
Okay. But
and just living in the not knowing.
exactly. That is called cognitive dissonance, So this is what you have to overcome. And many people are not willing to do it because what you say is like, it's very unsettling. And it's like, okay, where are the foundations? Where are the truth? What I thought it was true is not true anymore. What is going on?
Mhm.
What can I grasp? And we know that attachment and grasping to anything of this world is not right because it's just ephemeral and it's not real. The only that things are real are the ones that are not subject to change. And obviously, the belief systems and what you have thought it was true are always subject to change. So take it now
Mhm.
and don't wait for later. And in a way, I always remember this scene from The Matrix, the movie, where Neo is presented with the two pills. Which one do you want? You want the red pill? Everything is going to change for in your life and the way you look into the world forever. If you take the blue one, everything is going to look the same. And it's like, you can't pretend that everything is the same. So of course, many people say, okay, just leave me the blue one. It's not very satisfying, but at least I know where I stand. So that's fine. The red pill is the one that shatters your whole world view. And it of course is frightening. But here we go. This is one of the fears what we have to go through and overcome. And we came here to face our fears and go beyond them. But we can choose, as we said before, we can choose whether we do it in this lifetime or in the next one.
Yeah, The Matrix is an amazing movie. I remember when I first watched it, I saw it from the perspective that I was in at that time, at that age, and I was much younger and embroiled in raising kids and having teenagers. I don't anyway, whatever it was, I didn't see the fullness of it, but I got it enough. And then I watched it again about 2 or 3 years ago, and it was like, "Whoa." And now I wanna watch it again. There's a couple other things that happen in it, well, so many things that happen in that movie, but you remember there's also a character who's outside the matrix. He had taken the red pill, but he was tired of the reality and wanted to be inserted back in. He wanted to be inserted back in the dream, the illusion
Yeah.
of the world. And then there's another time where Neo is in the Matrix as an awakened, but in the Matrix, and he passes they're in the crowd, and he passes the woman in the red dress. Do you remember that?
Of course.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and everyone's like, "Oh, there he's looking an attractive woman," and no, that was like the materiality. It was like the Matrix luring you back in,
That's
and it's so yeah, it's seducing. Yes, it's very seducing to go back to something that's easier. And I think as people are listening to us, they may have absolutely no idea what we're talking about.
well, I mean,
You know?
most people have watched that movie. It's just, and if you
Yeah.
haven't watched it yet, we really recommend it because it really helps you understand. And so nowadays, I think it's more like a documentary than a movie.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. But I do think that people can conclude, why would I want to get out of the matrix if what I see of the real world, that it's all this mechanical, there's no texture, there's no beauty to it, but there is love. And that's what I think that was so interesting because the matrix is also a love story,
Yeah.
but it was rooted on like in reality. It was rooted in what was real and what was true, and that was part of this engineered reality
Right.
that everybody is dwelling in.
But I think it's a great, if it is a metaphor, and I'm thinking that is more and more, I think it is more a documentary. But anyway, let's take it as a metaphor and to be on the safe side. But I think it's like, this is real. It's like we are in a simulation. This is just a game. It's a simulation. And the person that is here, Carol and Monica, are just avatars. this is not the real one. The real one is the consciousness or the soul that is on the other side. And we just choose to be in this game, play the game as if it were real. But of course, it is not. It looks real. It tastes real. It tastes real, but it's not. It's just a game, a very well designed game. And what we have to remember is it's like, okay, don't be lured by it. Don't be seduced by it. Just know that this is a game and you can still play the game, but keeping the awareness that it's just a game. And this is real, the real concept of awakening. Knowing that, okay, I am playing this. I have this body. I have this mind. I have all the things that I possess, but this is not who I am. I'm just playing
Mm-hmm.
but with the awareness
Mm-hmm.
that I am the essence, I am the being, I am the consciousness that is just playing. And when you do that, then you take things much in a much lighter way, and you don't get so discomforted by life. You don't get so dissatisfied because you know that it's not meant to be satisfying because it's not meant to last. Nothing is meant to be satisfying here. And that's the great mistake, that thinking that all those things that we are sold, all the marketing, the media, the, the society, and like everything here is just superficial. And it doesn't mean that we don't have to enjoy it. We enjoy it, but without the awareness, forgetting that this is not real, keeping that awareness that this is not real. And of course, this is difficult, but I think this is the key of the game.
It does help. It helps one become less attached and less controlling. You know, I know when I find myself getting controlling, which I do, when I remember that, then it's like, I don't have to control that. But I have a question for you because you did say that you didn't want to waste your life uh, and you're on a path that to make a difference. You're on a path to educate people and to make a difference in this world. And so what I'm also intrigued by is this idea that this is an illusion, but some of us are really compelled to try to make this world better.
Well, I think it's
Do you know what I'm saying?
right, but this is part of the game. It doesn't mean that you don't play the game. You play the game without losing the awareness. And one of the things that make a lot of us come here, incarnate on Earth, is that we do care for the suffering of the world. And even
Mhm.
if a lot of people suffer here because they don't know this, because of the ignorance. So we come here to be able to make life easier for people living here, and more than anything, to help them awaken to the reality of who they are. So it's like, okay, if you don't remember, you become entrapped here. And the longer you stay in the matrix, the more you suffer. So we come here, some of us, to help others realize that. And some of the people come here because they just want to give a hand to those suffering. So we come here out of a compassionate heart and to develop that compassionate heart for everybody's suffering. So this is what happens everywhere in other dimensions. It's the same thing. We are moved by love, unconditional love. So we do care for the suffering of others.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do know there's another thing that the ego could also be involved in wanting to change the world, like wanting to form it in your own image. But if you pull away from that egoic tendency to this needs to change, from that to I'm here to be a message or I'm here to be of service. And there is a frustration of wanting everyone you love to get on the same train you're on.
Yes, but that's we have to learn always a lot of humility, because it's like, okay, we are not
Right,
God, so we don't know what is best for
right.
this person. All I can do is offering
Exactly.
a helping hand and let the person choose. We don't know what is best, so
Yes.
we'll have to. to hit rock bottom. Who are we to save anyone? We didn't come here to save anyone. We came here to give a hand, and that's as far as we can go. And trying to work on ourselves so we don't do it with selfish intentions. We do it really from our heart and work on our own consciousness and our own remembers and our own awareness. And that's the best contribution to the world by changing ourselves. It's not about changing others. It's like, okay, we have
Exactly.
so many aspects of ourselves that this is more than enough for a lifetime here.
I know it is a way. It's like the woman in the red dress. It's alluring
Mm,
to want to change other people. It's alluring to want to change systems that are out there rather than actually go into the self and look at where am I? Where is my level of wisdom?
right.
How am I evolving? And what channel of light can I be? And I think it's that woman in the red dress in the Matrix that draws us out to go pointing at other people and systems. And if only the world were like this, then everything would be fine.
Fine.
It's alluring.
And
Yeah, the other thing that's alluring is all the divisions that are going on, which I think are also contrived to keep us to make us against each other
yes,
in so many ways.
I know.
And at least in the US, the two political sides are it's contrived to keep us always thinking that one side's right and the other side's wrong, and it's alluring.
Well, but then we have to understand that this is all social engineering because really there's only one of us, there's only oneness, there's only one human family, but it's all set up to look different, to look like they're opposite to me, they're my enemy. And this is everywhere in the world. It's, all the wars become wars because of that. But we have to see from the point of view of geopolitics, we have to see, like, for example, only three asset management companies own like 90% of the stock market. And they own all the major companies in the world and all the media companies. So it looks like, okay, they're opposite sides of the politics. They're the same. They're just people just opposing each other, fighting each other, because they're interested in creating negative energy and fear. So we are controlled. And that's how you control people by creating fear in them. So if we go beyond that and we realize that there's kinship between us, that there's only one human family, that we are here to cooperate, that we are all looking for the same, which is not suffering and be happy, then there's nothing to fight them. But of course,
Mhm.
that takes a lot of work in ourselves instead of projecting our trash on others. It's so much easier to think that
Right.
others are to blame for my own unhappiness. That's not how it works.
Yeah, the vision of people waking up and recognizing our kinship, our connection, and it's so much more real and way beyond these contrived differences. And I agree with you. These higher level corporate interests or whoever the powers that shouldn't be are that they work both sides. They're not on one side. They're not the good guys or the bad guys. They use all sides. And we're sitting here, we take the bait over and over again. And we just can't see that we're doing the same thing over again, creating the same matrix or sustaining it,
Yeah.
keeping it up. And whereas the whole thing could fall apart if we just listen to our inner voice and remembered our truth and who we really are as I call them divine beings.
Exactly. And we are here to sustain a different grid, which is the grid of light. And I can only be sustained by vibrating in that light. And the light is not more than wisdom and compassion and inner peace. So for me, these are the three pillars of it. If you work on that, then the other grid, the matrix, will just collapse.
S-
But it really depends on individual consciousness. So there's nothing to go and change outside. It's not about changing the leaders or changing the institutions, but a transformation of consciousness that we have to take care in our own hands. Take responsibility for it in your own mind instead of blaming others, because then you will not progress at all in this life.
But one of the things I found interesting in your book is you highlighted 7 different levels of wisdom that the population is at. And it always helps me to remember that, people are different levels of consciousness. I mean, we know that. Not everyone's gonna be at the level I'm at. Not everyone's gonna be at the level people way above me are at, but there are different levels of consciousness that we're all at. And and I'm wondering, would you be willing to kinda walk through what those levels are? And I think it's just so interesting that the population's kind of they're populated in these different categories with very few at the top, but that what our life is about is evolving through these levels, and then how do we do that? So, I'd love for you to share some of that.
I think because of time constraints and all that, I'm just going to outline like a simple structure, which will be 3 tiers: pre-conventional tier, conventional tier, and post-conventional tier. So the pre-conventional tier is when people is before people get into society. So these are for societies that are primitive and have not really developed that kind of societal rules. Then the conventional is where most people are in our world, in our Western society at least. And then you have 3 categories there. But mainly it's like, okay, you have the constraints and the rules of your society, your culture, and you are completely you follow those rules and those constraints, and you identify with your ego, and you identify also with the rational mind, and that's all there is for you. There's only one paradigm, and this is the paradigm of society. You don't even think there are other paradigms. They don't exist in your mind. So to be able to leave that conventional tier to go to post-conventional, you have to be able to question. This is what we were talking before. It's like you need to be able to question the rules of your society, of your culture, to realize that this is only one paradigm, that there are many other paradigms depending where you look from. So in a way, you start not identifying with your physical body. You understand that you are more than that. And you start being more independent. So I will say the first stage of post-conventional would be, I will give an example, like the hippies in the 60s, where they are able to live society and society's rules, and they want to live in by their own rules. So this is how you live that conventional tier. And of course, the post-conventional within the post-conventional tiers, you have different levels until you reach the unity level, which will be almost enlightenment. And when you are at that level, you know, not just intellectually, but you feel that everything is perfect. You don't want to change anyone because you know that they're just right where they are and how they are. And instead of forcing things your way, you go with the flow. You accept everything because you understand that this is just how it has to be right here, right now. And you don't ruminate your past and you don't fear the future, because what it matters is the present, that you live in this present. And this is unique and this is beautiful. So y- it's, it's really living in with inner peace, flourishing, and not needing anything to be different for you to feel that way. And I guess
Yeah.
this is what we all aim at, whether consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah, it is really interesting when you have conversations with people who are either at that level or closer. Just the satisfaction with, yeah, well, maybe the world's all gone to hell, or maybe this war is happening, or maybe this is horrible abuse, and maybe the sun is shining in a beautiful way and it's all good. It's all okay. It's all okay.
This is an inner knowing that this all part of the infinite plan, and it's made out of love. This is not a hostile place. This is not a hostile world. The people are not your enemies. You are supported by the universe. The universe has your back, and you are not
Yes.
forgotten here. You are united with everything else, interconnected, and you are cared for, even if you don't feel it. It is there. And so what happens is, as you expand your consciousness, you expand your awareness, you look at the world in a different way, you look at yourself in a different way, you relate to others very differently. And you have even your ethics and your morals evolve. And in a way, you are in that state, you become that consciousness that is just transmitted, emitted, emanating through your physical vessel. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I think that what deep down, I think we sense that that's the direction, that the soul is drawing us into that direction, and that everything in this matrix is designed to distract us away from that journey. I mean, I can see it and I can feel it, and you become aware of, this is what I should be doing today, or this is where I want to evolve to, and then suddenly that woman in the red dress shows up, metaphorically speaking, and draws you back into the matrix. So, I mean, it's really interesting to think that we may have created all of this in order for us to grow. Like, it's not like this has been imposed on us. Like, we've created this whole matrix, this whole everything, this game we're playing, in order to support us in growing in the way that our souls yearn to grow.
Well, it seems twisted from the ego's standpoint, for sure. But from a higher perspective, for me, this is not a school. This is a boot camp for souls. It's much,
Yeah.
this is not just a school. It's much more difficult. But only the bravest of the brave come here because they know this is very difficult. But the award is so big that if you are able to overcome all these hurdles, your soul becomes so wise that you can serve in a much, much bigger way, and you can impact positively millions and millions of beings around the universe. And I think that promise is just worthwhile.
Yes, I love it. I had a guest on recently. His book was called Buddhist Boot Camp. The same old thing. Um, yeah, so we've talked about the awakening process. We've talked about the matrix. And I'm just going to quote another thing from your book. I really love this. We come to this demanding simulation called Earth not to repress our human traits. We come here to fully experience what it means to live in such a low vibrational, dualistic world and emerge from it enriched and polished. Our goal is not to stay alive, but to keep being human. And I love those last statements, that our goal, despite everything that this matrix control system throws at us, or everything that our egos attract to us, that if we keep choosing our humanity, our heart, our compassion, our wisdom, our love, that's what this game or whatever is really about.
Well, human beings are divine beings with a different disguise. So this is all it is. It's like we have to remember that we are divine beings, and we have to think, act, and speak from that divinity. That's all it asks of us. Of course, it looks simple. It seems simple when you say it, and it's much more difficult to make it, to embody that. That's our challenge. But what it asks of us is not something that is alien. It's something that is ingrained within us. It's also in our software. We have the ego software, but even I would say the hardware will be the divinity. So the hardware should be in command, not the software. And
Oh, I love that.
I think we have to remember that is what is asked of us is not to be different, is to be who we really are.
Right, right. And all of the sages and that's their message. That's that what their life emanates, whether it's Jesus or Buddha or whoever it is that you've met on your path. I think that's the message. The challenge is taking it from a concept and something that we've learned to, like you said, embodying it and being it. And that's why we're here. That we're here to do that, to take it from a concept to living it.
Yes, but I think it's in my experience, it helps to understand it first and then to make it
For sure.
work, to make it practical, to make it real in your everyday life. Because if that
Yeah.
concept doesn't exist in your life, then you get to merge into the matrix and you don't even know that this is a matrix.
Right, right. Yeah. I've got a question for you. When you were talking earlier on in the beginning about the two different paths or the two different trains and that the earth is changing its vibration and that those who are changing their vibration in accordance with the new vibration of the earth will be here and what happens to the others?
Well, in my visions, what I have seen is that there is like, but I'm not the only one talking about this by no means, you know.
No, you're not.
I think
Mm-mm.
the first one was probably Dolores Cannon and in her books, and
Mhm.
she gives very good accounts of that. But I have seen it in my visions, and the way I have seen it is like there's like a split of two earths. I don't know how it will happen in practical terms. I have no idea, but I have seen like two Earths splitting at some point, and one Earth will be fifth dimensional, and the other one will be three dimensional, third dimensional, because it will just be who can be according to your own vibration. So as I said, it's not like someone deciding you go here, you go there. You
Right,
you go where you have a resonance with. If you are
right.
fighting, if you are in the jealousy movement, if you are hating people, if you are criticizing people, if you are full of rage and victimness, and you are still holding grudges and so on and so forth, of course you cannot be in a fifth dimensional planet. I mean, it's just common sense. I don't think we have to be perfect, but we have to be evolved to a certain stage to be able to be there. And I think we have to strive for it because it's all within our own possibilities. It takes effort, it takes motivation, but it is feasible, totally feasible.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at stories like the rapture in the Bible and w you know, that's describing something and people come up with a meaning for that, but maybe it's something more like this where there's just a division of different levels of vibration, and that's just what happens.
That's
I've got one more
and I think
go ahead.
right in the Bible it talks a lot about that in the apocalypse.
Yes. Yeah, it does. It does. People have interpreted it differently, but it's interesting to think that that may be what these 2 trains, these 2 worlds, these 2 paths are. So I have this is a very elementary question because what happens to 4D? If there's 3D and there's 5D, what happens to 4D?
I think 4D is a way of speaking, and there's it's not existing really. So it's a
Okay.
way of speaking, and I think it's just a way to understand each other and how is this is how we have been all using. But it's really the 4D is just like the bridge we are really right now, I would say.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. That's a question I've had whenever people talk about 3D and 5D, I'm like, "That's a big jump.
Well,
Where's
I
4?"
think we are in the bridge right now, and it will
Yes.
just be when that happens, the bridge will just disappear because it will be only two. but we are on the bridge right now. We are crossing over, whether we go to one direction or the other one.
And this is something that has come to you in visions or in a dream, or you've come to understand that not from somebody telling you it, but you've actually seen
I
this.
have seen this, and I have seen a time where the rapture takes place as well. And I have had some visions and dreams as well, both. And I
Mhm.
get a lot of information about the world and my own life dreams. They're very vivid and very prophetic. And I have learned to interpret them. And I have a very evolved person that helps me interpret them when sometimes it gets a little bit difficult to see what's going
Mhm.
on. But
Mhm.
I think all the information is there, and we just connect with it. And I guess it also depends on our own mission on this lifetime. Some people don't need to know, and some other people need to know because they can help others that way. But it's all perfect, and I don't push for anything. If it comes. If it doesn't come, that's fine as well.
Yes, I love that. So I have I have another question for you personally because everything you shared with me is so interesting spiritually and about the world and all, and yet you train executives, and I'm really curious about what you're teaching or training executives in because I lived in the corporate world for nearly 20 of years before I got on the path I'm on now. And I'm sitting here thinking of you coming to this corporation, like, what are you gonna say that people are gonna listen? So I'm really curious about your corporate training.
I don't teach in corporate companies so much anymore. I think I'm leaning
Okay.
towards more spirituality right now because of the end times, and I think it's like
Yes.
is speeding up so quickly that this is my mission is kind of transforming itself. But when I go there, I just teach them mindfulness. I teach them emotional mastery. I teach them self knowledge because they are at the very basic level. And I mix it with neuroscience because that's the language that they can receive and understand, and they're open to. So I try to make it basic and in their own language so they will not feel rejection. But at the same time, I feel that my role with them is just leaving a seed, and then that seed will be with them. Maybe in this lifetime, maybe in 5 lifetimes, it's not up to me to know. So if I'm called there, I don't push for it anymore. But if I'm called there is a reason. And last week, exactly 1 week ago, I was called to talk in a very like a massive television. It's not television; it's on YouTube, but it have like 4 million followers. So it's like TV,
Mm.
and it's very normie land. So it's for normies. It's not spiritual at all. And I was given the opportunity. So I said, okay, I'm going to talk about inner peace. This is something that everybody aims at. And if I try to explain what the basics are, I think will help a lot of people. So I just try to adapt my message to the public, to the audience. And so in a way that they can understand, they can seize, and they can take it to start their path, wherever they are. And that's all I can do. So that's what I try to do.
And that makes so much sense, and I when I look back at my own life, there were many times where, seeds were planted that didn't make any sense to me at the time, but they in the consciousness of my own psyche, my own soul, they must have been fertilized and loved and cared for because much later, the idea came to me again or somebody mentioned it again, and it just catalyzed. So I think everything we do to just speak truth or what we know and not worrying about how it's landing, it's really important. I look back and I'm so grateful for all those seeds that people planted that I rejected in different times of my life, or I just didn't get it.
Mm.
But then when I got it very quickly. And without those seeds having been planted, I might not have made that awakening
It's, it's
transformation.
so
So it's
weird.
important.
It's so beautiful how we are all intertwined. And that's why we really have to work on the right motivation, because that is the right seed. If we are motivated by unconditional love and compassion, then whatever we plant, it will give fruits. We don't have to know when or where, but if we don't do it from that right motivation, then it will never give. So that's all. That's our only responsibility, to work on the right effort and the right motivation, and then everything else will be taken care of.
Yeah, that's a really good reminder, really good reminder. We're coming up on an hour. Actually, we're almost right there. And I want to give you the opportunity to share anything. This went by really fast. To share anything that you might want to leave our listening audience with before we close.
Well, there is a quote from there's a Jesuit Indian priest. So he already passed away, but he was very such an interesting character and very evolved. He was called Anthony de Mello, and he used to say the way to inner peace is to collaborate unconditionally with the inevitable. And I think that's a very, very good thing to keep in mind. Don't fight against whatever is happening. Don't resist. Just collaborate with it, and your life will be so much easier. And we need that. We need to be at peace with ourselves so we can be peace in the world. And that's a good reminder, and an easy one to remember.
Thank you so much for that. It's very easy to want to fight the good fight, to fight against, and collaborating with reality is a wonderful thing to leave with our listeners. Gosh, thank you, Monica, so much for your wisdom and for just sharing so openly and for playing in this field and reminding people of the choices that we have and that we're really here to evolve in wisdom. And I just really appreciate what you've done for my audience and for me also personally today.
Thank you for inviting me. It has been a real, real, real pleasure, because to be with like minded people, like hearted people, is just a beautiful gift. Thank you. Thank you, really, Carol.
Yeah, it's rare. It is. It feels so good. Yes. And I'll have all of your links and anything that you want to share with anybody who's listening on the page. And perhaps I'll have you on again in a year or so and see where we are.
Thank you so much, Carol.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And I now close the Spiritual Forum.